My good friends, I was asked to prepare a meditation for the Christians in Pembrokeshire and to prepare one for Good Friday. And so I thought that this was an opportunity for me to share what had been prepared with you as well. Last week, I took the funeral of a leading Christian in Aberystwyth, Professor Ken Walters. There are many stories about this man whose life was one of uprightness and integrity. But the one that I enjoy the most is the fact that Ken, whenever he watched Wales play their international rugby matches, they always won. Without fail, they won. It wasn't because Ken was a man of prayer and that he fasted for days in advance of every match. It was that he had worked out the system, that if he recorded the matches when they took place, and he waited to hear the result, he could watch the match knowing that Wales were going to win. And that was what he did. Sometimes it was just a walkover for Wales. Sometimes it was a nail-biter right to the very last minute. But he knew with confidence that the end of the match was going to be victory for Wales. A lovely idea. When God created the world, he took a risk. The risk was to give freedom, free will to human beings. He did it because love would be meaningless unless we human beings had that freedom. Love cannot be coerced. But the risk was that if we were created to love, then we also must have the capacity to hate. If we've been created with the ability to obey, then we must also have the capacity to disobey. If we have the ability to create a paradise upon earth, which we do, we must also then have the capacity to create hell on earth. And Mariupol would be a terrible example of what human beings can do. So this is God's dilemma at the beginning of creation. But wonderfully, in that work of creation, God had already taken into account the possibility that human beings might fall and fail. In his mind's eye, he has prepared himself and the world for the eventuality that human beings would misuse their freedom and mess up totally. And the advanced provision, what was it? Well, we read about it at the very end of the Bible, in the book of Revelation. We hear this: Jesus is the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. Jesus was not crucified before the earth was created, so that there was that crucifixion and then subsequently a crucifixion in history. That's not what it means. What it means is that preparation was already made in the mind of God for the crucifixion to take place if humanity failed. It was already agreed upon in the Godhead. This would be the solution if humanity made a mess of things. Now, any kind of thoughtful forward planning takes into account every scenario. So business executives stress test their equipment and their staff. Governments draw up disaster recovery plans. It's part and parcel of being a responsible government. If this happens, then we do that. If humanity gets it wrong, then for humanity's sake, we put into operation this rescue package, which is a lamb will be slain. The Son has already agreed. This is our decision. It's going to be a win for God. It's going to be a win for humanity. So when humanity does fail, right at the very beginning of time in the Garden of Eden, God is able to announce his plan. He speaks directly to the serpent who tempted Eve And this is what he says: I will put enmity between you, the serpent, and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He, that's her offspring, will crush your head, serpent, and you, serpent, will strike his heel. So God has a plan. It'll take a long time to unfold, but it is ready to put in action. And that is exactly what happens at Mount Calvary. The plan is the complete destruction of evil, the conquering of it once and for all and forever. The place where that victory is going to happen is on the mountain of Calvary, where a descendant of Adam and Eve, Jesus Christ, has his heel struck. This is the very place where the serpent himself can bite. Let me show you this picture. On the one side here, you can see the remains of a human being's ankle and the nail that went right through it to attach the body to a cross. Here is an impression of what it would have been like. The nail goes right through the heel from one side to the other. Now, the normal means of crucifying somebody for the Romans was to drive a long nail through both heels and hold the body up to the cross. The serpent then at Calvary does his worst. He strikes the heel of Jesus, the Son of the living God. Nailed to planks of wood, the serpent has got him nailed down. He cannot escape, and death takes him away. At the end of Friday, it appears as though the serpent has won. So too on Saturday. But on Sunday morning, there is a stirring in the tomb, and Jesus is raised by his Father. When Jesus emerges from the grave, he snaps in two the greatest weapons that the serpent possesses. Guilt is one of them. Sin has been dealt with in Jesus' sacrifice at the cross once and for all. He took our guilt, he took our punishment, he took our shame, so that we, through his sacrifice, may be forgiven. But here was the other weapon that was snapped into: fear. Death is defeated once and for all in the tomb of Jesus, for he was raised by his Father never to die again. Now, Isaiah, in his prophecy, writes in a most important passage about a Messiah who is going to come and who is going to accomplish what we've just described. He writes as though these events have already taken place, although they refer to a time in the future. So 750 years before the crucifixion of Jesus, Isaiah describes it as a done deal, something that has already happened and that will achieve great things for humanity. Listen to Isaiah's description of what this Messiah will do. He writes, "He, the Messiah, was despised and rejected by mankind. Himself a man of suffering, familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem." That's absolutely right. They rubbished Jesus, the things that he taught and said and did. Isaiah goes on, "Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted." That's absolutely what they said about Jesus when he was hanging on the cross. They said even God didn't want him. Isaiah goes on, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. That's absolutely right. Jesus was our representative, our substitute, our sacrifice, our hope. He died for our transgressions, not his, and for our iniquities, not his. And that death brought us peace. But Isaiah hasn't finished. He goes on, he was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. So he was, the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy man. Though he, the Messiah, had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. That's exactly how it happened. And then Isaiah says, he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. He bore the sin of many, including me. He bore the sin of many, including you. Have a happy celebration this Good Friday. God bless you.